Discover how a janitor's daughter exposed an incredible secret. The CEO's life changed forever. Emily stood at the entrance of her high school, the echoes of the bustling halls filling her ears like a distant storm. Just days ago, news broke about severe budget cuts that threatened to erase the only support systems keeping her community afloat. With every step, her heart raced. She felt the weight of her family's struggles and her father's pride as a janitor, his tireless work for a company that seemed to ignore the lives it affected. This wasn't just about her dreams, this was about the lives hanging in the balance in their working-class neighborhood. As she walked through the empty corridors, her fingertips grazing the cold metal lockers, she stumbled upon a dusty box tucked away in a forgotten corner of the storage room. Inside, she found an old letter, faded and yellowed with time. It was her father's bravely penned opinion piece he had written years prior, challenging the CEO of the company for neglecting people like them. The words rippled in her chest, igniting a fire. How can you build your empire while our streets crumble? Emily's mind whirled with possibilities. If her father could fight against a giant, maybe she could too. With a deep breath, she sat down and poured her soul into a heartfelt letter. She wrote about her neighbors, their dreams shattered by a system designed to turn a blind eye. Mr. CEO, she began, her pen trembling as she pushed through the doubt. She knew this would take courage. Days passed, and she didn't sleep well, knowing her letter floated in the vast indifference of corporate bureaucracy. Finally, she received a notification, dismissed as a misunderstanding. Rage bubbled inside her. Was she even surprised? The cold realities of her life hit her like icy wind, leaving her breathless. But instead of retreating, she turned her fury into action. She rallied her classmates, igniting a movement fueled by shared stories of struggle, a wave of voices rising together against the tide of neglect. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The day of the community forum arrived, charged with anticipation. Emily stood before the crowd, a sea of expectant faces ready to hear the voice they had been waiting for. She locked eyes with the CEO across the room, acknowledging the disconnect that felt like a chasm between them. Her heart pounded in her chest. "You build your success on our backs," she declared, her voice ringing out like a clarion call. "But it's time to recognize our humanity." The moment hung heavily in the air, a mix of silence and raw emotion. Would he feel the weight of their stories? Could her words penetrate the steel armor of corporate indifference? The entire room leaned in, breath held tight, waiting for a response that could alter everything, not just for her, but for their families and community. Would the CEO's heart shift? In that charged silence, hope flickered like a flame ready to ignite a revolution. What would he say? The tension in the room was palpable. Emily felt her pulse quicken as she waited for the CEO to respond, a million scenarios running through her mind. What if he dismissed them again? What if he ignored their plight completely? Would this be another loud shout into the void, falling on deaf ears? Yet, despite the fear swirling inside her, a quiet strength anchored her feet to the ground. The CEO, a man whose polished image had always seemed synonymous with success, rose slowly from his seat. Emily observed the tight lines around his mouth, which softened just a fraction as he took a deep breath. Her heart skipped. Could he be moved by her words? Was there a glimmer of understanding in his expression? "We are grateful for your passionate speech," he began, his voice steady but noticeably strained. "But I must remind you, these decisions are not simple. Budgets are budgets." The murmurs in the crowd surged like a wave, fueling her adrenaline further. She thought of her father, his long hours spent scrubbing floors, the weariness etched into his skin. Emily grasped the podium tighter, unwilling to let his indifference trample her courage. If your empire stands on a foundation of our struggles, then it is your responsibility to ensure that we are valued, she challenged, her voice rising over the crowd's reacting murmurs. She could feel the heat rising in her cheeks, but this was no time to shy away. You can't keep shutting us out while you enjoy the fruits of our work. There has to be more than just profit margins. That last statement reverberated through the air, and she watched as the CEO hesitated. His brow furrowed. The room held its breath, and in that moment, realization dawned: this wasn't just a speech for the community. It felt like a moment of reckoning. He shifted again, and his gaze swept over the crowd. I see your frustration, he said, his voice softer now. And it's valid. I promise to consider your words carefully. A flicker of hope ignited in Emily's chest. Applause erupted like a thunderstorm. Faces around her lit up with joy, relieved to see some form of acknowledgement. But before she let her heart swell with triumph, she reminded herself, this was just the beginning. She needed to keep pushing, to forge a path that would ensure real change. Even as cheers erupted, Emily caught sight of the administrator to the side of the room, a skeptical frown creasing her brow. That was a warning sign, a reminder that change was rarely welcomed, especially from someone like her. She glanced back at her classmates, each of them filled with a new determination. They were ready to rise together. After the forum, the buzz continued. Journalists flocked around her, eager to capture the fight of a young woman who dared to challenge authority. This was her moment to shine, the chance to amplify her community's voices. Yet, amidst the excitement, a knot of anxiety twisted in her stomach. What if this attention faded? What if they returned to apathy? As the question lingered, Emily resolved to ensure they'd never be silenced again. She began planning an awareness march, something that would refuse to go unnoticed. The clock was ticking, and with the CEO's uncertain promise hanging in the air, she knew they couldn't afford to slow down. But just as momentum built around her, a text notification flashed on her phone. The message was from an unknown number, and the words sent shivers down her spine. I know the truth about the CEO. Meet me at the park. What truth could be so significant? Emily felt the weight of uncertainty settle over her once more, and she realized that she stood at the threshold of something far bigger than she had ever imagined. She glanced back at her friends, determination clashing with apprehension. Was she ready to uncover whatever secret lay ahead? Emily lingered on her phone, the words blurring together as her heart raced. Unfamiliar numbers usually spelled trouble, but the message felt like it carried the weight of something monumental. She pushed aside her growing anxiety and turned to her friends, who were discussing the forum's success with wild excitement. Guys, she interrupted, her voice steady, though her insides twisted with uncertainty. I just got a text. Someone wants to meet me at the park. They say they have information about the CEO. The energy shifted in an instant. Each face turned serious, as they each processed the implications. Sarah, her closest ally, leaned in closer. What do you think it could be? Do you trust it? Emily shrugged, glancing back at the screen. I don't know, but my gut says this might be important. I believe we're on the brink of something big, and we can't afford to let it pass. They exchanged looks, eagerness mixed with fear. It struck Emily that they were all in this together. Whatever happened, they would face it as one. Tell us where and when, said Jake, his voice firm. 5 o'clock at Riverside Park, she replied, nudging away the swell of nerves. We'll meet up then. Let us be careful, though. As the minutes drew closer to the meeting time, Emily found herself studying the familiar park surroundings, each tree and shadow flickering with memories of her childhood. It had always been a space of warmth, laughter, and fleeting moments of innocence. Yet now, under the weight of uncertainty, everything felt different. The wind rustled through the leaves, sending shivers down her spine. When she spotted a figure standing near a bench, apprehension kicked in once again. The person's face was obscured by the brim of a baseball cap. As she got closer, tension seeped from her posture. She took a deep breath and approached. "Are you?" she began, but the figure turned suddenly, revealing a familiar face. It was Mr. Jenkins, the janitor from her school, the same man who waved at her every morning with a warm smile. "Emily," he said, his voice low yet steady. "Thanks for coming. What do you know about the CEO?" She was surprised by her own urgency. Mr. Jenkins looked around, as if ensuring they were alone. "I've seen things that don't make sense. He doesn't operate like your typical CEO. His decisions are influenced by someone else, someone powerful. I think his priorities, they go deeper than just business." The word sent chills down her spine. "What do you mean? Who?" He hesitated, drawing a deep breath. "Let's just say his connections run to places you wouldn't expect. It has to do with how this company was built on exploitation, using the most vulnerable among us for profit." Emily's heart ached. She felt the stories of her community bubbling to the surface, all those hidden struggles, the sacrifices of families like hers. "How can we stop it?" "Exposing the truth is only the beginning," he said, his voice urgent. "You need proof. Real evidence to break through the facade." As he spoke, Emily felt fire ignite in her chest. This was it. This was the transformation she had been looking for, not just for herself, but for everyone impacted by the CEO's choices. After sharing details about the upcoming march, she glanced over her shoulder. Time was of the essence. They would have to act fast and strategically. "Mr. Jenkins, I won't let this go unnoticed. We can help our community. We can change this." He nodded slowly, but there was a heaviness in his eyes. "Just remember, sometimes the truth can be dangerous." A knot twisted in her stomach as she took in his warning. What lay ahead would be challenging. But what choice did they have? And yet, as she left the park, determination surged through her veins. Whatever awaited them, whatever secrets they uncovered, she was ready. But in that moment of resolve, another text buzzed through her phone. The message read, "You're in over your head, Emily. You don't know who you're dealing with." The urgency of the situation hit her hard, a wave of fear mingling with excitement. What had she unleashed? Emily felt the weight of the text settle over her, like a storm cloud ready to burst. She could sense the danger lurking, but her resolve only grew stronger. She couldn't let fear dictate her actions. Not now. Not ever again. On the bus ride home, her mind raced. The streets flashed by, each familiar landmark reminding her of her community: the small bakery where her mother worked, the after-school programs that saved her friends, the families living paycheck to paycheck. Were they part of the bigger picture Mr. Jenkins hinted at? How deep did this go? She could feel every pulse of her heart thumping in time with her thoughts. When she finally stepped inside her home, the air felt thick. Her mother was in the kitchen, stirring a pot on the stove, the savory scent of chicken soup wafting through the small space. "Hey, Em. You look a little pale. Everything okay?" "Yeah, Mom. Just a long day." Emily forced a smile, though the knot in her stomach tightened. She couldn't involve her mother in this, not yet. The implications were far too heavy, and her mother wouldn't understand the risks. As the evening dragged on, Emily felt like a caged animal. Her fingers itched to text Sarah or Jake, but she hesitated. They needed a plan, and she was the one to lead it. They had momentum, but now they needed direction. Gathering her breath, she finally texted them both, "I have to meet with you guys tomorrow. Let's figure this out." Sleep came hard that night, dreams haunted by shadows of power and control, vivid images of every person she saw daily, all at the mercy of someone above them. She woke the next day feeling like she had a mission. They were a collective, a team ready to face whatever awaited them. At school, she moved through the hallways like a hawk. Every whisper, every glance seemed to pulse with urgency. She spotted Sarah sorting through her locker. "Come on, we need to talk." Sarah looked up, letting her curiosity take over. "What is going on?" When Emily shared everything from Mr. Jenkins to her plan for the march, Sarah's eyes widened. "You really think we can expose him?" Emily nodded, a mix of determination and hope blossoming inside her. "We have to. If he's using people like us for profit, we can't stay silent." "We're with you," Jake said, joining them with a supportive grin. "But we have to be smart about it." "What's next?" They found an empty classroom and strategized. Their brainstorming led to ideas about gathering testimonies from those who had suffered, distributing flyers, even setting up a discreet online forum to share information. They were trapped in their small room, but the excitement felt electric. As they plotted, the minutes turned into hours, and what started as whispers of doubt transformed into a chorus of hope, drowning out the risks. But just as they began to finalize their plans, Emily's phone buzzed again. The same familiar number. "I'm watching you, Emily. You have no idea what you're stepping into." Fear clawed at her insides, but instead of retreating, she felt fueled by it. The stakes were getting higher, the battle looming closer. "We need to stay alert," she warned her friends, the weight of the threat hanging between them. "They know what we're doing. We can't back down now." They exchanged worried glances, yet their determination remained unbroken. In that moment of uncertainty, a single thought sparked within Emily. What if they weren't just in for a fight? What if they were on the edge of a full-blown revolution? But the pressing sense of danger was still hanging overhead, like a dark cloud ready to burst. What would they uncover, and who else might get caught in the storm? Emily felt the words of the text resonate in her mind. She looked around the small classroom, her heart hammering in her chest. What if I really can't handle this? The thought flickered like a flame, but she shook it off. The stakes were too high. They had come too far to turn back. Jake leaned forward, his brow furrowing. "Okay, let us think. We need to gather evidence but stay under the radar. If he's watching well, we can't risk being seen as a threat yet." Sarah nodded, her eyes alight with fervor. "What if we start by talking to people in our community? There have to be others who feel just as trapped. Maybe we can create a network or a diary of experiences. It would give us a clearer picture of what we're up against." Emily clutched her phone, considering Sarah's idea. The thought of connecting with others made her stomach flutter, but the idea of sharing those stories seemed like a way to give a voice to the unheard. "Yeah, that could work. But we have to stay careful. We can't let anyone know what we're doing." They all agreed and immediately reached out to a few trusted classmates. The plan was surprisingly simple. They would gather stories and accounts anonymously, establishing a shared document online that couldn't be linked back to any of them directly. But as they worked, Emily's phone buzzed again, causing her to jump. Another message. This one read, "It's not just about you anymore, is it? Watch your back." Panic gripped her, but she forced herself to take a deep breath. "Look, I know we're nervous but we can't let this scare us. Fear is what they rely on. We can't let them control us." Jake narrowed his eyes, but what if it escalates? What if we suddenly find ourselves in over our heads? "We won T," Emily assured, though her own heart raced with doubt. "This is bigger than all of us. We'll be careful and smart. And if we stay united, we can handle anything." They pushed onward, enlisting people willing to share their stories of hardship and exploitation. The days turned into a blur of hushed meetings in corners of the library, or late-night texts that kept them connected. They found ways to gather information without drawing attention, their lives entangled with the very real stories of others' stories of struggle, pain, and resilience. Emily felt a new strength emerging within her, fueled by the voices they were collecting. Each story added to her fire, a flickering light in the encroaching darkness. At night, while her mother slept soundly, Emily typed furiously, weaving the narratives together, empowered by the truth that was ready to unfold. But one evening, as Emily walked home with Sarah after a strategy session, an uneasy feeling settled in her gut. A car parked a little too close to her house caught her eye, engine humming softly in the twilight. She paused, a chill spreading through her as the driver's silhouette turned toward her, obscured yet unmistakably familiar. "Is that?" Sarah whispered, noticing her sudden stillness. Before Emily could respond, a loud honk echoed through the street, startling her. Another text buzzed in her pocket, and she almost didn't want to look. What if it was another threat? With a deep breath, she unlocked her phone. "We're going to take this to the next level. You'll regret this." The word sent a shiver down her spine. They had come so far, but how much further could they go before it was too late? Anxiety gripped her throat as realization hit hard. Someone was actively watching them. Would they push through the fear, or would they let the threat silence them just when they were on the brink of revolution? Emily's heart raced as she turned to Sarah, the urgency of their mission pushing her forward, leaving doubt behind. "Maybe we're just getting started, but how far will we go?" she asked, half to herself, half to Sarah, the question hanging heavily in the air as they made their way home. Little did they know, their fight was just beginning, and the real challenge lay ahead. The next morning, a thick fog hung in the air, muffling the world around them. Emily could barely focus as she sipped her coffee. Her thoughts kept drifting back to that car and the ominous text. She felt like a scene in a movie, always one step behind the characters on the screen, vulnerable and exposed. In school, the atmosphere was charged. They had planned to meet in the library, but the tension was palpable. As she walked down the hallway, whispers trickled around her, curiosity painted on the faces of her classmates. Emily felt the weight of their stares. Were they on to her? Every pair of eyes seemed to hold a question. "What are you doing?" "Hey. You okay?" Sarah asked, catching up with her. "Not really," Emily replied, rubbing her forehead. "I can't shake the feeling that we're being followed. It's like I'm trapped in this nightmare, and I can't wake up. Do you want to talk to Jake before the meeting? He might have some ideas on how to keep things low-key." Emily shook her head. "No, I think I just need to dive in. Ignoring it only makes it worse." The library was quiet, a stark contrast to the chaos in her mind. Emily and Sarah found Jake already seated at their usual table, flipping through a folder of notes. He looked up, his brow tight. "You guys ready? We have to tighten our approach. The last thing we need is to draw attention." "Agreed," Emily said, trying to steady her voice. "But we can't back down just because of a few texts. There's too much at stake." Jake nodded, but Emily could see hesitance lurking beneath his confident exterior. "All right, first things first. Let us analyze the stories we've gathered, see if we can identify any patterns. Maybe there's a larger connection." The hours melted away as they delved into their notes, maps of emotion sprawling across the pages. Each account was more devastating than the last, people losing their homes, families torn apart, every word a raw wound. Emily felt the weight of every person's struggle pressing down on her, yet it solidified their resolve. When Irina, a fellow student, approached timidly, Emily's heart sank a little. I have a story to share. But, I'm scared, what if they find out?" Emily's heart raced at the potential consequences. "You can trust us," she reassured, remembering her own fear. "But we need to keep this anonymous to protect you. Your safety comes first." Irina nodded, her eyes brimming with tears, and began to recount her tale. The words tumbled out, revealing the injustices her family faced from the very people meant to help them. As Irina spoke, Emily felt an overwhelming surge of determination. This wasn't just some school project. This was real-life people's lives hanging in the balance. But just as they were beginning to feel empowered, Emily's phone buzzed again. She glanced down to see another cryptic message: "You think you can expose the truth? Don't underestimate what's at stake." Panic clutched her heart, but a newfound defiance bubbled to the surface. She looked at Sarah and Jake. We can't stop now. This just shows how important our work is. Emily, please let us consider the risks, Jake urged, genuine concern filling his voice. What are we waiting for? Emily felt her passion flaring. People need help. They need to know they aren't alone. As the library doors creaked open, an unsettling wave of uncertainty washed over her. Their mission was growing bolder, but so were the threats surrounding them. Emily's heart pounded louder, and she couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching. What's our next move? Sarah asked, gazing at the door as though someone might walk in at any moment. Emily took a deep breath. We reach out to more people. We get their stories, and we make sure the world listens even if it means facing the danger head-on. The tension electrified in the air as they exchanged glances, adrenaline pulsing through their veins. Would they be able to handle the storm brewing ahead, or would fear crush them before they had a chance to speak out? Emily's resolve was set, and as a wave of determination washed over her, she wondered, what would happen when they finally revealed the truth? The answer loomed like a shadow, dark and uncertain, waiting to unfold. The library buzzed around them, but Emily felt cloaked in a bubble of urgency. Each tick of the clock seemed louder, echoing the weight of their task. She stared at the map of stories scattered on the table, each line a thread connecting pain and injustice. How could people stand idly by while so many suffered? Let us split up and gather more stories, she suggested, her voice a resolute whisper. Irina was just the beginning. We need to make sure everyone knows they have a voice. Jake hesitated. But what if the message gets back to them? They could retaliate. Retaliate? Emily said, her heart racing. They already are. Ignoring this is not an option. Sarah took a deep breath, her resolve mirroring Emily's. I'm in. We can't be afraid to confront this. With a nod of agreement, they grabbed their backpacks. The plan was set: they'd speak to classmates, gather tales, and compile them safely. However, as they left the library, the fog outside seemed heavier, wrapping around them like a blanket soaked in tension. Emily walked swiftly, her mind racing with possibilities. They first approached Riley, a classmate known for his humor but rumored to have family troubles. As they sat on the edge of the school courtyard, Emily's heart pounded. Would he open up? Hey, we're collecting stories, she said softly. I know it can be scary, but it's important. Riley glanced around, his eyes wary but intrigued. My dad lost his job last year. Everything turned upside down. You've heard the stories, right? Emily nodded, her heart tightening as he spoke. As Riley poured out his family's struggles, she absorbed every word. This was a tapestry of hardship woven from different lives. They were all connected. But then, as he retold his family's financial strain, Emily's phone buzzed again. She pulled it out, her stomach knotting. What's it going to take for you to quit? The threat sent chills down her spine. Before she could process, Sarah leaned in and whispered, Emily, are you okay? You look pale. Emily blinked, forcing a smile. I'm fine. Just let us keep going. Next, they approached Noor, a quiet girl known for her brilliant writing but never sharing her struggles. Emily felt a spark of hope as Noor hesitated, her guard wavering. I haven't shared this with anyone. My parents are fighting over bills, sometimes, I don't know where we'll sleep. Tears glistened in her eyes, and Emily felt a rush of empathy. It's okay, Emily said, placing a reassuring hand on Noor's shoulder. You're not alone in this. As Noor spoke, the emotional weight of their mission grew heavier. Every word resonated in these raw, unfiltered moments. They were channeling voices silenced by fear. Hours passed, the sun dipping below the horizon, casting shadows that wrapped around Emily like a tightening noose. They regrouped in the library, the collective silence heavy with the day's intensity. Did we really make a difference today? Jake asked, his voice low but filled with awe. Emily met his gaze, feeling the weight of every truth exposed. We can't stop. We have to keep pushing. Suddenly, the door creaked open, and an unexpected figure stepped inside the school principal, Mr. Darnell. His presence felt imposing, and Emily's heart raced. What are you all working on? I couldn't help but notice fear coursed through her veins. Would they be shut down before they could even begin to expose the truth? Just a project. Emily stammered, faltering. Mr. Darnell's brow furrowed. Because I've been hearing things. I'd like to know more. You might want to tread carefully. The insinuation hung in the air like a storm cloud. Emily's resolve was threatened, but deep down, she felt a fire, a determination born from the stories she'd heard. What if this was only the beginning? She thought. What if they weren't just consequences, they were catalysts for change? But as Mr. Darnell turned to leave, a sense of foreboding nudged at her. Did they have the courage to face the storm brewing just beyond their reach? The stakes were rising, and with them, the weight of their mission. Emily's heart thudded painfully, and she couldn't shake the creeping anxiety. What awaited them beyond the shadows of tomorrow? The day after, the hallways of the school felt different. The usual chatter carried an undercurrent of tension. Emily glanced at Jake and Sarah as they walked together, the nerves palpable in the air. It was as if everyone could sense something shifting, something unsaid hanging heavily between them. We need to stay focused, Emily said, pushing through her own nerves. We have to talk to more people, get more stories. It's important now more than ever. Jake's eyes were still fraught with worry. What if we're doing more harm than good? The principal knows. Word could spread, and who knows what will happen next. Emily shook her head. We can't back down. This is bigger than us now. If people are scared, they need to know they're not alone. We need to shine a light on this. Sarah nodded, her resolve hardening. Where to next? As they walked into the lunchroom, the usual clamor of trays and laughter echoed. Emily noticed the familiar face of Peter, someone who often blended into the background. He sat alone at a table, picking at his food. Emily's heart twisted a little, she remembered hearing whispers about his family situation. Guys, let me talk to him, she said, her voice soft but determined. Jake and Sarah exchanged glances, and then nodded. Emily approached Peter, her pulse quickening with each step. Hey, mind if I join you? Peter looked up, surprise crossing his face. Sure. Emily sat down and forced a smile. We're collecting stories about struggles and tough times. I thought maybe you'd want to share. Peter's gaze dropped to his half-eaten sandwich. Silence enveloped them for a moment, and Emily's heart raced. Would he open up? I don't want to get anyone in trouble, he finally said, his tone almost a whisper. Emily leaned in, her voice steady. You're not alone, Peter. That's the whole point. We need to help each other. He hesitated, then nodded slowly, the weight of unspoken truths gathering around him like storm clouds. It's my brother. He got into a bad crowd. My parents, they just don't understand. They think yelling will fix it. But it only makes things worse. Sometimes, I'm scared he won't come back home. As Peter spoke, Emily's heart broke. She felt the sting of tears forming, the raw emotion radiating from him. Here was yet another story, one more thread in a tapestry she was desperate to weave for others. Thank you for sharing that, she said softly. You're really brave for speaking out. Just then, a heavy shadow passed by the intimidating figure of Mr. Darnell once again. Emily's breath caught. Instinctively, she stood, feeling the need to shield Peter. What would the principal do if he overheard this vulnerable conversation? But Mr. Darnell was only passing to speak to another teacher, his attention elsewhere. Emily felt both relieved and tense at the same time. Once he was gone, she returned to Peter. You deserve to be heard, you really do. You're not alone in this. Peter finally met her gaze, his eyes shining with a mix of hope and fear. What if nobody cares? What if it just makes things worse? Emily thought of the messages on her phone, the threats lurking behind their mission. The truth is scary but necessary, Peter. Sometimes being brave means risking everything. But silence? That only keeps the cycle going. They locked eyes, and in that moment, Emily felt a surge of strength not just for herself, but for everyone they spoke to. She couldn't help but brainstorm how to spread this feeling, how to let others know they weren't alone. Suddenly, a voice piped up from behind them. You won't believe what I just heard. Emily turned slowly, the dread settling in again. Would it be more gossip about their efforts? Or something more dangerous? But she had to know. What was unfolding around them started to feel like the epicenter of something much larger, and she had to be ready to face it head-on. Would the truth be enough to save them all or plunge them deeper into danger? Emily turned to see who had spoken. It was Lisa, a classmate who often drifted in and out of the social circles, occasionally surfacing with tidbits of gossip that threatened to ignite a wildfire of rumors. The tension in the air thickened, and the approachable smile she had worn moments before faltered. What did you hear, Lisa? She asked cautiously. Lisa leaned closer, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper that made Emily's skin prickle. I just overheard Mr. Darnell talking to a teacher. They mentioned something about a student needing help, but not just any student. They said it was serious, like it could blow the whole thing wide open. Blow what wide open? Jake chimed in, inching closer, his eyes reflecting a hint of fear. Like, the truth about what's really going on here. Rumors are flying about students getting into trouble and about their parents. Lisa shrugged, but a glint of excitement danced in her eyes. What if it has to do with that petition you guys started? What if someone's trying to shut it down? Emily's heart raced. The unease all around felt like a gathering storm. She glanced over at Peter, who was peering at them with a mix of curiosity and concern. We have to be careful, Emily cautioned. We can't let fear stop us. But if they're saying things like that, what if it puts people at risk? Sarah added, her face pale. For a moment, the lunchroom's chatter faded into the background, consumed by a whirlpool of Emily's racing thoughts. The stakes were getting higher. She felt a heavy cloak of responsibility settle on her shoulders. Okay, she said, taking a deep breath. Let us find out more. But we stick together. We're not letting any of this scare us. They began to strategize, forming a plan that revolved around gathering reliable information. What if they could talk to Mr. Darnell? Or maybe even reach out to the teachers who had been mentioned. As they discussed their next steps, Peter raised his hand tentatively, breaking through the life-or-death conversation. Can I help? I mean, if you want to, Emily replied, heartened by his willingness. You've dealt with a lot. Your story matters. Peter nodded, strength building in his words. I want to make sure no one else feels as lost as I do. If we can help others, I'll do whatever it takes. Just then, the loudspeaker crackled to life, interrupting their plans. Attention students, please report to the gym for an important assembly immediately. The voice was cool and authoritative. It belonged to Mr. Darnell. A wave of discomfort washed over the table. This can't be good, Jake muttered, his brows drawn together in worry. As they made their way to the gym, the hallways felt charged with a kind of electricity. Students' faces reflected a mix of excitement and anxiety, all rushing toward uncertainty. Emily exchanged worried glances with Sarah and Jake as they took their seats. What do you think he'll say? Sarah whispered. I don't know, Emily admitted, her earlier bravado wavering. But I have a feeling it's going to change things. The gym filled quickly, the murmur of voices dimming as Mr. Darnell stepped onto the stage, a severe expression set on his face. The atmosphere felt thick, a coiled spring ready to unleash. Suddenly, he cleared his throat and looked out at the sea of faces. We need to address a situation that has been brewing. There are issues within our community, issues I have recently uncovered. It's time to face the truth. An uneasy silence enveloped the crowd, and Emily's heart raced. What truth was he about to reveal? Did it connect to the stories they were gathering, or was it somehow tied to the dangers lurking even closer? As the principal began speaking, Emily felt the grip of her determination. They had to be prepared for anything. The path ahead was going to be treacherous, but they were about to step into a reality that could change everything. Emily held her breath, her thoughts a swirl of possibilities. What would happen if everything they had been working for was about to crash down? Or worse, what if it exposed the very truths they were trying to reveal? The moment had arrived, and the ripple effects were more profound than any of them could have imagined. The gym echoed with murmurs, the crowd restless as Mr. Darnell gripped the podium. Today, we will discuss troubling matters affecting our school and community, he began, his voice steady yet tinged with urgency. Emily felt her heart pound. This was the moment they had been gearing up for, the moment when secrets might spill open like a can of worms. As Darnell spoke, Emily exchanged glances with Sarah and Jake. "I just hope he doesn't try to silence us," Jake muttered, his brows furrowed in concern. "Let us just listen," Emily whispered back. Every word from Darnell made her pulse quicken. "Reports of financial hardships affecting many families have come to my attention," he continued. "We need to ensure everyone feels safe and valued in this space." A murmur vibrated through the crowd, questions darting like fireflies. Darnell's gaze hardened as he added, "I've heard whispers of dissent, conversations happening behind closed doors. I want to have it. We need transparency." Emily's heart dropped. This sounded like a threat. Would they be punished for their efforts? Would speaking out put them in even more danger? But then, unexpectedly, Darnell turned the focus. "I'd like to encourage dialogue among students and faculty. If you have ideas to improve our financial situation and overall morale, you're welcome to share them." Hope sparked in Emily's chest. Was this his way of encouraging their movement? Maybe he does want to engage with us, she thought. Darnell glanced over the audience, then his eyes landed directly on Emily. "I've heard a passionate voice out there, one that has shared concerns about our priorities. I want to hear you, Emily." All the eyes in the room bore down on her like a spotlight. Gulping hard, she stood, her legs feeling like jelly. "Mr. Darnell, thank you for speaking to us today," she began, her voice shaky but resolute. "I believe we need to address the inequality many are facing due to budget cuts. It's critical to recognize that we can't turn a blind eye to the struggles of our families." As she spoke, energy surged through her, emboldened by the strength of the stories she had gathered. "We are not just statistics. We are people, children of hard-working parents trying to build a better life. We deserve support, resources, and most importantly, recognition," Emily proclaimed, each word gaining strength. Applause erupted, filling the gym with a deafening sound. Faces around her glimmered with hope, empathy wrapped in every reaction. "I suggest we create a forum," she continued. "Inviting families to share their stories will amplify voices that often go unheard. Change won't happen unless our community listens." The room buzzed with agreement. Shock flickered on Mr. Darnell's face, but there was a glimmer of something else, a begrudging respect. "Give me your ideas," he said, loosening his discomfort. "Let us put them into action." With that, the floodgates opened. Students jumped up, voices raising, sharing their experiences and outlining proposals for community support. Emily felt a weight lift off her shoulders, her communal fire igniting those around her. By the time the assembly ended, they had collectively designed a preliminary plan for a community outreach program to connect school resources with local families. As students dispersed in a wave of excitement, Emily slipped out of the gym and ecstatically embraced Sarah and Jake. "Did that just happen?" she exclaimed, disbelieving yet hopeful. "We need to do this. We can't let this momentum fade." Did you see Darnell's face? Jake laughed, exhilaration lighting up his features. He didn't expect any of that. But just as a wave of victory swept over them, another message rang out on Emily's phone. The same ominous number flashed on the screen. You shouldn't have done that. You think you can change things? Be careful or you'll pay the price. Fear slithered through her, but it was quickly eclipsed by determination. We can't let this stop us, she said firmly, her voice ringing clear. This is our moment. For all of us. As they walked home, sharing excited ideas about the next steps, Emily felt a new dawn rising over her community. The connections they had forged could no longer be undone. Every story they gathered, every voice that joined them, was an ember fueling the spark of change. And those shadows, no matter how threatening, couldn't drown out the song of their perseverance. This was just the beginning, a united front layered with hope that could never be extinguished. With a heart full of purpose, Emily smiled wider than she had in months, thinking about the journey ahead. It was no longer just about her voice, it was about everyone else. They were ready to face the truth, armed with the courage to enact real change. This was their fight. They would not be silenced. Now is the time to take action. Subscribe immediately to the channel so you won't miss what's next in these incredible transformations. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and help us reach more people who need this story. Comment below with your reactions, your thoughts, and your dreams for change. And don't wait not even one more second. Share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this journey unfold. True supporters know how essential it is to engage and spread the message.